then you would have.
7 o'clock, I'm going to call the special meeting of the Board of Selectmen to order. Our first item of business is the Pledge of Allegiance, and I would recognize Selectman Baker.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. I see all members of the Board of Selectmen are present. This is a special meeting of the Board of Selectmen. As such, we can only take up those matters that are properly listed on our agenda. So I'd start off by moving on to public participation and asking if there are any comments from members of the public. I recognize Geraldine Corso.
Hello, hopefully this computer is working. Is it working? All right, so I just wanted to make a really quick comment. I know that you're discussing the charter, and I think one of the big questions affects my board quite a bit. And I just need to say that I really am not for it not passing 3 times and going to the Board of Finance. Only because I feel, well, there's a couple reasons. The first biggest would be is that I think we've discussed this over and over again, and it's about one board not having so much power, that there's boards that we offset each other so that nobody has so much power that something bad could happen. With this setup, I see that there could one day be, I look back in history, and I know I'll kind of give my age away, but if I look back in history, there were times where, you know, we did not have good boards of finances. So what if we have a board that is completely against the police department, and they choose that after 3 times that it fails, they're not going to fund the department, so they're going to bring it down to a certain percentage and not fund the police department. I just think it can be a very dangerous situation. And to be honest with you, from my opinion, I did not like the position we were in this year at all. I didn't like not giving it to the taxpayers and the taxpayers not being able to decide. We did what we had to do. I hope we did it as good as we could do it, but I would not want it to see it be the norm. So I just wanted to share that.
Thank you, madam. Any other comments from members of the public? Any other comment from members of the public? Seeing none, we will move along to new business, which is discussion of the charter revision questions and a potential vote from the Board of Selectmen. So I've circulated via email to members of the board the questions as legally constructed for us by Pullman Comley. Mike and I have talked about these and have made sure to the best of our ability that they are unbiased and objective. That said, based on our conversation from, I've lost track of the day last week, but one day last week, we had talked about framing out potentially 8 different things into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different questions, I think. We should have those ready and in front of us. I think the easiest thing to do would be to, well, before we do that, I was going to go through each question and solicit conversation and potential action. But before we do that, Attorney Andriana, what is it that we need to accomplish this evening?
If you want to move this forward to a referendum vote in November, the board would need to, and it can, pursuant to state statute, approve the final report that was submitted to you by the commission as a whole, approve parts of it, reject parts of it, and I will point out the draft resolution that you have in front of you does reject one of the proposed changes because based on state statute, it just runs contrary to state statute. That is the provision that was proposed about having the Board of Selectmen prepare the annual town report. It is explicit in state statute that that's a Board of Finance job to prepare and publish that. So the way I've set up this resolution is that provision, which you're permitted to do under state statute, would be rejected by the board tonight. So the first step would be to approve and reject different portions of the board. As I said, the resolution in front of you approves everything but that one provision. And then the second step tonight would be approve the questions that would go on the ballot. And the questions that you have in front of you as part of the resolution is boiled down to 4. Again, under state statute, and I've seen a variety of different approaches, you can just propose that the charter as approved by the Board of Selectmen, be approved. Or you can break it up into separate questions here like we've attempted to do, having kind of a catch-all with kind of grammatical and technical changes, and then maybe highlighting some of what are considered probably the more substantive changes to the charter. So all that action needs to be done. You need to submit the questions to the voters at the November 3rd election. And then I've also built into here that the town could, if it elects to, prepare explanatory text with respect to the charter questions. So those are the steps for tonight.
Okay, so one of the things that we need to do, and Charlie, I see, I'll get to you in just a second. One of the things that we need to do is accept, according to the statute, we need to accept the Charter Revision Commission's final report. And we can do that in whole or in part, or we can do that in whole or reject it in whole. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. And then we decide, after we have accepted all of the report, hypothetically, if we were to accept the entire report and then decide we only wanted to move 3 of the 4 questions onto the ballot, or 2 of the 4 questions onto the ballot, that's still proper, right? Or would we have to accept only the parts of the final report that we want to forward onto the ballot?
Yes, because ultimately the voters have to approve the changes in the charter. So you would, and that starts, it's a recommendation final report from the Charter Commission. The Board of Selectmen approve basically what's going to be submitted to the referendum, and then the referendum would vote up or down on the charter changes through the specific questions.
Okay, but if we wanted to, so for example, the question that talks about requiring the Board of Education and the Board of Selectmen to submit their budgets prior to a public hearing, if we did not want to advance that, would we be accepting the entire Charter Revision Commission final report, or only the piece that didn't exempt that as an example?
You can, I think you're a little unclear, Jay. I can't hear you super well, but I would think you would reject, you can reject sections of the final report that you do not want to move forward to a referendum vote. There is a provision in the statutes for sections that are rejected by the Board of Selectmen for a petition. Go back on, I think it's a 10% threshold. Don't hold me to that, but there is. So if town voters felt that they wanted to, have that portion of the charter final report considered, they could petition to get it back on for a vote.
Thank you. Charlie, did you have a question?
Jason, I somehow got missed out on that email.
Me too.
Oh, yeah, because instead of CD, it went to Instead of CN, it went to CD. So Christine DeBarge has it. Apologies for that, Charlie.
Okay.
Okay. So what we need to do then, by accepting this resolution, Mike, by moving the resolution, that's the first step. And then we decide which of the questions, if
Yes.
any, we want to forward to the ballot.
Well, you know, and if you accept or approve any portion of the final report, you got to have at least one question to have that at least that portion go to a vote to referendum vote.
Yeah, we couldn't accept the final report.
Right.
And then have 0 questions on the ballot.
Right.
We're gonna do
Right.
that, just reject them.
The Board of Selectmen is not the ultimate arbiter on this question. This goes to a referendum vote.
Okay. This is a very specific process. Is everybody clear on what it is we need to do?
I think I'm clear on the fact that we accept only the portions of the final report that we want to. So the first step we got to do is go over the final report and accept and reject any piece of it that we don't want. So obviously we got to reject the one that has to do with the state statute and then go from there. And then we would only make resolutions for the ones that we accepted. Right?
Questions, right.
Okay, so Mike, what we want to get to is we want to get to the point in time where we're looking at the 4 questions that you have drafted for us. So we need to read the resolutions in whole. And the reason I'm asking this specifically is because there is one question in particular that is going to be, well, there's at least one in particular that's going to be somewhat controversial amongst us. And I want to make sure that we're not inadvertently doing something that will compel us to take an action we don't necessarily want to take.
Okay.
Um,
That being the case, what I would suggest is then you're basically, step 1 will be kind of the first 3 resolutions on what I prepared for you would be approving the final report except for certain sections that you want to reject. Second step would be rejecting those sections that you do not want to forward to a referendum vote. And then the third step would be whatever portions of the revised charter is approved, you submit those to the voters at the November 3rd election. And if you do just those steps, then you can come back and work on, and then we can work on each of the questions.
Okay. Marie, did you have a question or a comment?
I have a question, if it's appropriate at this time, on, and my computer's down because I lost my phone use. But on one of the questions, it has June 15th at 11:59 p.m. To finalize the vote by the Board of Finance. Is that statutory? Is that just the date they go to line with the last day of the vote?
That brings the process in line with the current process. It brings in their amended process, which is 3 referenda and then set by the Board of Finance in line with the current deadline that is involved in the charter. It's not a statutory,
That's correct.
charter-based deadline.
So we could actually move that up to give more time if we wanted to?
Well, let's be clear here. The Board of Selectmen cannot change the revisions to the charter. You
Okay.
can only accept or reject as presented to you in the final report.
Okay, thank you.
And the final report didn't address changing the June 15th date, so the June 15th date stays as is current language.
I think that June 15th date and 11:59 was actually, at least what I was looking at, was one of part of the change as the way it was written. So it's in the charter. You can't do anything with that date and time.
Okay.
Other questions or comments? Is there a motion? Mike, we can do this piecemeal, right?
I'll make a motion.
I'm sorry, Marie, 1 second. We can do this piecemeal, right? We can do the first resolution, the second resolution, the third resolution as appropriate, right?
Yeah, I think my suggestion would be for someone on the board to make a resolution to, approve the final report. If you want to, you can accept out from the get-go the changes in section 810, because we know those are contrary to state law. Have a second, and then the board can have a discussion and decide if there are any other provisions of the final report that they want to reject. And if that's the case, we would need to do an amendment to the resolution that's on the table to add probably other sections of the charter to reject. And then once we have all those, you can vote on the amendments and then vote on the resolution, and then we know what's being approved. Then the second one, the rejections are easy because it's everything
Not approved.
it's not approved, and then we can move from there and ultimately get to the questions.
That's a good solution. So Marie, you were making a motion.
Yeah. I'll make a motion that we accept I don't have the verbiage in front of me. Hold on. Make a motion that we accept the elimination of the annual report being done by the Board of Finance and not the Board of Selectmen.
Marie, do you want to make that saying that you make a motion to accept the final report of the Charter Review Commission, except for the changes in section 810 with respect to the annual report? Then we can have a second, and then we can have a discussion if there are other sections that the board feels should be rejected.
So will you accept that as a friendly amendment?
That's fine.
Is there a second?
Yes, I will.
Sarah Muska, Selectmen, I'll second.
Motion made by Marie, seconded by Sarah, to accept the Charter Revision Commission's final report with the exception of the amendments suggested for section 8-10. Is there any discussion? So I'll start off then. There are effectively four amendments that we are considering tonight. The first one is the minor technical changes. I have not heard in any of our discussions anybody who had any objections to that. So I think those should stay in the motion as currently made. What do you guys think about question 2, which is the title change for the treasurer to the finance director? Marie?
I don't like the way it was worded. It almost sounds like they're giving her two positions, treasurer or finance director. It was to replace, I thought, so finance director, and the treasurer becomes the finance director. That's not how I'm reading it in the question.
Yeah, once Mike comes back, we'll ask about that. I think we can make that correction because I don't think that's a material change to the intention from the final report from the Charter Commission. I think that's just verbiage that he used in terms of framing that question out. And I think it could rightly be, shall section 6.6 of the town charter be amended to permit the town treasurer to also be known as, or be known as the town finance director, or be renamed as the finance director.
Oh, and
Right.
Jason, help me out here. Maybe I didn't see the final report. I saw, I think what was the draft report, which was online, and reading from that, it says the change was the finance director may be the town treasurer. I don't know, was that changed in the final report?
No, there were no changes from the draft report to the final report. So that's actually what that verbiage is. And we can't massage the wording of that question because that wouldn't reflect what's in the language from the final report, right?
Right. So. I mean, and obviously I wasn't there. I mean, is there a sense, what's the sense that what the commission was proposing there? Because I want to make sure the question is consistent with what was being proposed in the report. We all want to do that, make sure that the voters are voting on the right things.
Well, I would say that in the conversations that that I witnessed as just an observer to their process, they certainly weren't suggesting that the person who is currently the town treasurer would be taking on a second job, but a second designation. But you know, I mean, we could ask the chairman of the commission if what I just said actually reflects what their intention had been in that verbiage, and then take it from there, I guess. Rebecca? Tanya?
So the intention for that question and change was that it was allowing the town to have that flexibility if we wanted to keep a town treasurer or have a finance director. But it's my understanding the change that we made allowed the town to have that option to have either a town treasurer or a finance director, but not put us in a limitation of just having a finance director, was the way that I thought we were wording it. Does that make sense?
To me, I'm just not to opine as to whether or not the verbiage as presented before us, if we're locked into that.
So it says the finance director may be the town treasurer. So the idea would be that one person would take on both roles.
If I remember correctly from conversations that have been had in various meetings about this over the years, it was that when you're going to hire somebody, if you're, and correct me if I'm wrong, others, you know, if you're advertising for a town treasurer, that was kind of like archaic language, and you know, it was more likely to get the type of person that you wanted, that had the skills that you wanted, that it had this other title, whatever that title might be, which we've decided would be finance director. Something along the lines of that, wasn't it? I'm looking at everybody except for Mike.
That's correct.
Literally not looking at Mike.
Okay, so it's
So hold on. If we're looking at the actual verbiage in the final report and comparing that to the actual verbiage in question 2, if we just struck the word "also" from the question, that verbiage becomes exactly as it is in the final report.
mm-hmm.
And then the question would read, shall the charter be amended to permit the town treasurer to be the town finance director? Does that still, to anybody else, does that still suggest that there's a dual role, or is that, and that becomes exactly the language from the report. At that point, I mean, we're doing exactly what is in the report.
I would agree.
So if that's the idea and you want to keep that change in, when we get to changing the questions, I see no problem in changing question 2 as you just proposed, Jason.
Okay. So other than syntax, on the merits of the question, is that something that we're going to include in our resolution to carry forward to the ballot, or do we want to park that?
I'm good with it.
Good with keeping it or getting rid of it?
It's with including it with the amendment.
Anybody else? Sarah?
I agree with Alan. I'm good with it, moving forward with it also.
Charlie?
I'm good with it being amended and moving it forward.
Okay. So we're not amending the question at this point, right, Council?
Not yet, not yet. We're trying to determine if, other than section 810, there are other provisions of the final report that the Board of Selectmen want to reject.
Okay. So then that gets us to the third resolution, which requires both the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education to each submit their initial budget recommendations by initial public hearing in the budget process. And this is like really just barely not a technical change. I mean, it really is clarifying language that was supposed to have been happening all along, that just hadn't quite been worded in such a way so that it accomplished that. But I think certainly the intention has been and remains sound to say, if you're going to have a public hearing on something, there should be something to be heard. So the public should have an opportunity to review whatever it is that's going to be considered in the public space ahead of the public hearing. That just seems like, it doesn't seem, I guess it seems obvious. So does anybody object to including that recommendation?
I don't have a problem.
Not at all.
I don't have a problem either.
Charlie?
I'm good with that question, yes.
Okay. So that gets us to question 4, which I think is our fourth and final question, which is the question that, or the recommended change that redesigns the budget process after the third failed referendum. So in this, there would still be 3 budget referenda. They would still be on the dates prescribed. The process leading up to that would all remain the same. The question then becomes, should the charter be changed to have, after a third failed referenda, the budget returned to the Board of Finance for the Board of Finance to set the budget and the mill rate? This is the big question. So where are people on this? I mean, I'll lead off and say I have hemmed and hawed about this since our recommended change to the Charter Revision Commission was rejected. And I'm of many opinions of it. And I could argue on one hand, but on the other hand, but on the other hand, but on the other hand. And I think certainly the perception would be, if this were to be forwarded to the ballot, I think the perception would be that there is some effort to take people's vote away. But I think, on the other hand, the current system, after 3 referenda, takes people's vote away. I think that the 2% system that we have is not a good way of governing ourselves, because it is not set at an appropriate level. And I think that the recommendation, even the sentiment, not just the recommendation, because Sarah had a different perspective, doing 2% plus CPI, whereas we just wanted to change the percentage to something that was more manageable. Both of those are a better way of governing in terms of actually managing town government functions than what we currently have. But those aren't really available to us. So the choice is, do we replace a bad set of circumstances with a different set of circumstances? And if we do, is that different set of circumstances better or worse? And I don't think it's any better, really. I think it presents a different set of problems, not the least of which being that the Board of Finance is elected for 4-year terms in staggered terms. So if you were to get a Board of Finance that was elected that was too far afield from where voters want to be, either in terms of too aggressively spending or too conservatively spending, that becomes a set of circumstances that takes a long time to correct. I think that the voters would be at a disadvantage in that case because they may not have known or they may not have been prepared for some more draconian decisions either way. But on the other hand, if we forward the question to the ballot, the 3 referenda and then set by the Board of Finance to the ballot, then the voters are deciding, I want to change the system that we have to something new, or if it's rejected, I want to keep the current system that we have. I reflect a lot on conversations I've had around this with the town manager from South Windsor I mentioned last week. This rings in my head that when he was in East Hampton and he found themselves in a circumstance where they were in a perpetual budget rejection system, he would have killed for the 2% vote. That to him would have been like, oh, there's an end in sight. We can move on. We can manage that. Just move forward. If we find ourselves in a circumstance with a board that decides they're going to waste a 10% spending increase on the voters, or they're going to eliminate the police department, in either way, that puts the community in jeopardy, and there's no recourse beyond those 6 people who are elected. And then I spent some time talking with voters that I know, people who are not politically engaged, but whose opinion I value. And almost universally, the feedback from them was, if your choice is change the process so that it goes back to the Board of Finance or keep the 2%, almost universally, the perspective was keep the 2%. And then I think about the comments that we heard at public hearings, and I think about some of the rationales that were offered up supporting those positions, and I think about some of the correspondence that I got from people who just wanted to share their opinion on the process. And I just keep coming down on the side in the position that I think the change is worse than the current circumstance. And I think if the proposals or the suggestions that we had put forward last week were adopted, I think my answer would be differently. But I'm not going to support moving this to the ballot. That's where I am. That's my process. That's how I got there. I do not like the current system, but I think the proposal isn't better. So I'd open that up for questions or comments or other perspectives from members of the board.
Well, I will go, I guess, since nobody else wants to talk. I actually went through a very similar process as Jason describes. And I didn't actually make up my mind until about 6 o'clock or 5:30 today. I've been on both sides of it throughout ever since our last meeting. But what I've known from the beginning is I didn't like the proposal that was given to us, and since the beginning, since I heard that proposal, I've been asking people right up to having conversations today about it, and I haven't had anybody say they wanted to do that, and so there's no way I could support this. It is unfortunate, but I think we'll just have to continue to work on this problem to get this one fixed. But I don't think this is a fix, and I want to make a decision that we're going to have to try to fix for the next 10 years. So I'm not going to support it either.
Comments from others? I think we lost Marie. So Charlie?
Selectman Nordell. Yeah, I've argued it on both sides as well. I think we all have. We can all support an argument for both sides. But at this point, my feeling is I'd rather try something new, or at least let the voters decide on trying something new. Is my position on it. They're going to have the final say, so I'm all for moving it forward to the voters to decide.
Sarah or Marie?
Sarah Muska, Selectmen. I've had similar feelings as you, Jason, and Alan, and I'm sure Charlie and Marie as well. Going back and forth, and obtaining feedback from residents, and I've gotten a lot of mixed reviews. Some are actually thinking, oh, well, this might be better than the 2%. Others are not in favor of it. I can see it from both sides as well. I can see how it really gives the impression that we're disregarding somebody's vote, and I don't like that about it. But the way I look at it currently is that even though I'm not in favor of it and I don't think it's the best scenario, I am at this point in favor of moving it to the ballot to let the taxpayers decide which way they'd like to go. So that's where I am right now.
Marie, are you with us?
I'm back. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I've been doing the same thing the rest of the board has been doing. I'm not happy.
Lost her again.
I'm sorry. My house is a mess right now. Hold on. Let me go outside, see if I can get better connection. Yeah, as I was saying, I don't like the 2% at all. And I don't like the proposal either. For reasons that people have mentioned. Again. Can you hear me?
Yeah, but don't move too much. So this is what we call building suspense.
Can you hear me?
No.
Can she dial in and call in?
My phone lines are down, my computers are all down, so I'm on myself outside. And there's some kind of interference. I keep going in and out.
Well, we can hear you now, so speak quickly.
I'm going to vote now. I'm putting it forward. Although I believe the 2% is doing us justice, voters, I'm against.
I'm sorry, did anybody get that?
I'm pretty sure, and I think she'll need to repeat it, but I'm pretty sure she said she was against it, and that was her last thing she said. I'm against it. Pretty sure.
Marie, are you in favor of it or against it?
Against.
Okay.
Also put it in the chat.
I did.
Yeah, I saw that. Good idea.
Boy, that's interesting. We're voting by chat message now. Okay, so it looks like we would accept the recommendations that get us to question 1, which is the minor technical changes. We would accept the recommendation that gets us to question 2. We would accept the recommendation that gets us to question 3, and we would reject the recommendation that gets us to question 4. So, Mike, what do we have to do in order to do that?
So there's a motion on the table to approve the final report, except for the changes in section 810 about the annual town report. So if you want to vote on the section 8.5 failed budget referendum language, someone's going to need to make a motion to amend the resolution that's on the table. Second, you can have discussion, but then you would vote to amend, to, I guess is what we're talking about. The vote would be whether we would add to the original amendment to not only reject section 810, but section 8.5B, what is it? B, the changes in section 8.5B4. You would have a vote on that, and then you would go back to the original question of voting on the final report as a whole with those sections which the board has voted on to reject.
We'll make a motion that we amend Marie's motion to strike the word also in question 2.
You're not going to do the questions yet, Alan? I'm sorry. Just all we're focused on is which sections of the final report do we want to, I guess, accept and reject.
I thought we wanted to do the grammatical change as well at this time. Skip that. So I'll make a motion to.
We're going to come back to the questions. Really, all we're talking about here is the provisions of the final report we're accepting or rejecting, and then we'll deal with the questions.
Okay.
Obviously, like if this budget referendum one gets rejected, then we don't have to worry about a question for that.
Right. And so I would amend Marie's motion. I make a motion to amend Marie's motion to reject the question for the resolution for 8.5B4.
Is there a second to that?
Second.
So that leaves so we're going with the resolution as amended. Oh, I'm sorry. Any discussion on the amendment to the resolution?
Jason, just for a point of knowledge for everyone here, I just want to point out any provisions of the final report that are rejected tonight. As I mentioned before, they are subject to a petition by 10% of the voters. If they get the petition and it goes all the way through, then you would have to hold, by the time that is done, it would be unlikely to add those questions which were petitioned to the November election because we're getting too tight. So if that went through, ultimately the town would have to hold a separate referendum, but you actually have 15 months to do it. But I just wanted everyone to know that going into it.
And if I remember correctly from reading that amendment, that section, that's section D of 7-91, right? And I think they have 45 days to get that petition in.
Correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
So 10% is like 750 signatures. Okay. So there is an amendment on, there is a resolution that has been moved and seconded. There is a resolution amending that resolution that has been made and seconded. Is there discussion on the amendment to the resolution? Seeing none, Selectman Baker.
Aye.
Selectman Muska.
No.
Sarah, you're a little choppy. You voted no?
Sorry about that. Yes, no.
Selectman Nordell?
Oppose.
Selectman D'Souza?
Aye.
And I vote aye. So the resolution is, so Mike, we now have a resolution on the table that accepts the pieces of the Charter Revision Commission's final report that we want to forward to voters.
Right.
Do we vote on that now and then the questions, or do we vote on the questions and then the resolution?
No, you would vote on the final report that you're going to accept, which would be kind of right now, which would be as submitted, accepting out the changes that are in section 8.5B4, which is relating to the third failed budget referendum, and section 810, which refers to the town annual report. So that's kind of the motion on the table right now. That would be your vote. If that vote goes through, then technically, I think under the statute, that's what you would accept. You would then vote to reject those two sections, 8.5B and 8.5B4 and 810. And then you would vote on that. And then you would vote to submit the revised charter as approved to the November election, and then we would vote. We could vote on all the questions at once, or we could vote on each of the questions as we go through.
Okay, so we're going to do the resolutions. So then the first thing that we do is we vote on the resolution as amended on the table, which is to accept the CRC's final report.
Exactly.
For section 8-5B4 and section 810. Is that right?
Yep. Correct.
And that has been moved, it's been seconded, it's been amended. Is there further discussion on that? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Selectman Baker.
Aye.
Selectman Muska.
Aye.
Selectman Nordell.
Aye.
Selectman D'Souza.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Would be a new resolution, which would be to reject the Charter Revision Commission's final report recommendations pertaining to section 8-5B4 and section 8-10. Is that right, Counselor?
Jason, can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
So,
Couldn't hear you.
and I will, but just for explanation's sake, we just accepted the parts of the recommendations that we're going to accept. Now we're going to reject the parts of the final report that we're not going to accept. So the next resolution should be to reject the Charter Revision Commission's final report concerning recommended changes to section 8-5.4 and to section 810.
Do you want to do those separately, or?
Can we do those separately, Mike, or should that be all at once?
You can do them separately.
Separately is probably easiest, just so people.
Yeah, so it's a little clearer.
Oh.
Okay. So someone would just need to make a motion. Why if we start with 8:10?
That's where I'm headed here.
It's drafted on the document. It's the
Yeah, I got it. Looking up for it. So I'll make a motion to reject the recommendation to revise section 8-10 of the charter.
Sarah Muska, Selectmen, I'll second.
motion has been made and seconded. Is there any discussion? Any discussion? Seeing none, Selectman Baker.
Aye.
Selectman Muska.
Aye.
Selectman Nordell.
Aye.
Selectman D'Souza.
Aye.
The recommendation is rejected.
So I'll make a motion to reject the recommendation of the commission that pertains to section 8-5B4 of the charter.
Is there a second? Marie is
I'll
in the second. So the motion is to reject the Charter Revision Commission's recommendation concerning section 8-5B4. Clear, a motion, a vote in the affirmative is a vote to reject. A vote in the negative is a vote not to reject. Is there any discussion? Selectman Baker.
Aye.
Selectman Muska.
No.
Selectman Nordell.
No.
Selectman D'Souza.
Aye.
I vote in the affirmative. So the resolution or the recommendation is rejected. What's next? Now we need to resolve to, or we need to do a resolution to forward this to the November ballot, right?
Yes, as approved to the November ballot, right.
And that's outlined in the fourth resolution on page 1.
Or actually, I guess the third. So it's resolved. It's the second, be it further resolved that the Board of Selectmen hereby approves the submission of the revised charter as approved to the voters at the November 3rd election. There's other language there, but.
Okay, well, I'll make that motion that we approve the submission of the revised charter as amended and approved to the voters entitled to vote at the election scheduled November 3rd, 2020, during the hours of 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Such vote to be held at town's 2 polling places.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made by Alan, seconded by Marie. Any discussion on the resolution? Seeing none, Selectman Baker.
Aye.
Selectman Muska.
No.
Selectman Nordell.
No.
Selectman D'Souza.
Aye.
I'll vote in the affirmative.
Okay.
I'll confess, I'm not sure. What would have happened there if that had failed? The whole thing would have been over, right?
Yeah, if it's not voted to go to the right.
Okay.
Throw the baby out with the bathwater.
So,
I thought that was a ministerial motion myself, but. So now we're on to the questions, right?
yes,
Okay. And this is where the resolution is going to be to forward the 3 questions that we're going to forward with the specific verbiage, right?
correct.
And so how's the easiest way to do that? You want us to read each question and approve each question and then approve all three and forward them to the ballot in total?
I think my suggestion here, Jason, would be to, for a motion for, I guess what we're talking about now would be the three questions and a single motion to approve the three questions, which should be read as the way we want them on the ballot, the way you want them on the ballot, and then, have a vote. There can be amendments, but for example, in question 2, which we've already discussed, there's no need to go through the amendment process to take out the word also. You can just propose the question in its original form without also in there. And then if there are other amendments that people want to make, you would discuss and vote on those. And then I think it makes sense to have one vote on the whole set of questions to be submitted to the voters.
Okay, so I will make a motion that we send 3 questions, and I'll read the questions to referendum. Question 1, shall the town charter be amended to make grammatical, technical changes and clarifications that do not affect the meaning of the town charter? Question 2, shall section 6-6 of the town charter be amended to permit the town treasurer to be the town finance director? Question 3. Sorry, my here. Question 3. Shall section 8.4 of the town charter be amended to require the Board of Selectmen and the Board of Education to each submit their initial budget recommendations to the town clerk at least 5 days prior to the initial budget public hearings of each board?
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion made, motion seconded. Any discussion on the motion or the language? Seeing none. Selectman Baker.
Aye.
Selectman Muska.
Aye.
Selectman Nordell.
Aye.
Selectman D'Souza.
Aye.
Okay, motion carries. Mike, is there another step we need to do to this, or are we effectively?
I think that the very last step would be the resolution on the very last page about the Board of Selectmen authorizing, and all you're doing is authorizing, you're not requiring it, but the board should authorize, if it's determined, to prepare an explanatory text with the charter questions. That's another vote of the board if it wants to do that.
It certainly doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and make that motion, at least for discussion. So make a motion that the Board of Selectmen authorizes the preparation and printing of explanatory text in accordance with section 9-369B of Connecticut General Statutes for the questions to be voted upon, subject to the approval of the town attorney. The board further authorizes the presentation and printing of materials concerning the questions to be voted upon, in addition to the explanatory text in accordance with section 9-369B statutes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Made and seconded. Is there discussion on the motion?
I think if we're going to put these questions out there, we got to blurb for everybody that's, from the source, and, we can take any input from the commission, the Charter Commission as well, but we should certainly make sure everybody has what it's all about, because I know even last year when the whole town was in an uproar over the 13 questions, and I stood at the polling place all day long. People were asking, hey, what are these 13 questions about? So we should definitely make an attempt on letting everybody know what we're up to here.
Any other comments? Seeing none, I'll call the roll. Selectman Baker.
Jason, just again, point of information, and I'm sure all of you know this, but just to be clear, explanatory text under the statute is fact-based, so everyone knows that. It is not pro or con, it is just fact-based, and that's a requirement of the statutes. I just wanted everyone to know that.
Good point.
And I think important to all of us as well. Selectman Baker.
Aye.
Selectman Muska.
Aye.
Selectman Nordell.
Aye.
Selectman D'Souza. Selectman D'Souza, you're muted and I can't see you.
Aye.
Okay. Attorney Adriana, does that complete our process here? All right, thank you so much for your help in this process. We certainly appreciate it. And thank you to the Charter Revision Commission for their work and trying to accomplish a daunting task in a limited amount of time. We certainly appreciate their efforts.
Thanks, Mike, and thank you to the commission.
We will have an executive session. Selectman Nordell has asked to recuse himself from discussion of the topic that we'll be taking up. There will be a vote afterwards. I'll pause the recording after a motion to go into executive session. Charlie, that'll be it for anything pertaining to, for anything that you would be participating on for the evening. So can I have a motion to go into executive session subject to Connecticut Statutes 1-206B?
So moved.
Sarah Muska, Selectman, I'll second.
All those in favor, Selectman Baker.
Aye.
Selectman Muska.
Aye.
Selectman Nordell.
Aye.
Selectman D'Souza.
Thank you, board. I'm leaving.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you.
Good night.
Executive session at 8:02 will include 4 of the 5 selectmen, and there will be a vote afterwards. 17, we're coming out of executive session. Is there any further business to come before the Board of Selectmen?
I will make a motion to offer Rich Austin the job of town fire marshal at the rate that he is currently getting and not to exceed the appropriation that is in the budget at this time.
Sarah Muska, Selectman, I'll second.
Motion made by Selectman Baker, seconded by Selectman Muska. Any discussion? I'd start by saying that I think all 4 of the candidates that we interviewed were very qualified for the position and would have done a great job in the role. I think that Mr. Austin interviewed particularly well, and I think that he also brought new ideas that might benefit the community as a whole that he brought up during his interview. I also think that it's beneficial to the town that he's participating in a fire marshal function already, including in the town's economic development work and at staff meeting level. He's familiar with our software and our processes. I think he's a good choice. Are there other comments?
I would like to just say that I wish we had the problem of trying to figure out which excellent candidate we wanted to choose for all the positions that we ever need to fill. There were great candidates and all really dedicated to the field, and it was really impressive, all their credentials. And I would just say that I really felt like the stuff that Rich was going to bring to the table is probably the direction we want to go. But thanks to all of them for applying.
Well said. Any further discussion? Seeing none? Selectman Baker.
Aye.
Selectman Muska.
Aye.
Selectman D'Souza.
Aye.
And I would vote in the affirmative. I'd also note for the record, Selectman Nordell asked to be recused from this conversation throughout the process due to family conflict.
It was the iPhone again. Oh, we're in.
That's right. So we have no further business to come before the Board of Selectmen. A motion would be in order to adjourn. Is there a motion?
Yes. Yes.
Motion made by Alan. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Sarah. It's not debatable. Selectman Baker.
Aye.
Selectman Muska.
Aye.
Selectman D'Souza.
Aye.
We are at 8:20 p.m. Thank you, folks.